Hello there, Reject Nation. I'm Greg Alba.
I'm John Humphrey.
And I'm ADORKABLE Rachel.
And last night we saw Mary Poppins Returns.
Mary Poppins Returns!
The highly anticipated movie of December. Forget Spider-Verse, forget Aquaman. It's all about Mary Poppins returning, guys. Listen, before we hop into this review, I wanted to say thank you to all who have been following us on the Stardust app. Over there, we do 30-second reaction reviews for films, TV shows, and trailers. A lot of them are micro sketches, actually. I believe Rachel's on there as well, right?
Yes, I am, yes.
Yes, she is. So go ahead, download the app. Follow us first before you follow Rachel. You know, it's free to download, free to use, so do it today.
And you can post your own reactions, too.
Yes. Oh, I never mentioned that.
Yeah,
That's
really
a
important.
great thing to mention.
No, you must only watch, never post.
Oh, God, why did I never think of that? Anyway, Mary Poppins Returns, guys. Look, you've seen the trailers. You know what Mary Poppins is about. She's back in action, okay? There you go. Plot description out of the way.
And it's the longest it's been for a sequel ever. Over 50 years, yes.
Well, it's funny how after they come back over 50 years, they do a movie that's almost beat for beat the same movie.
Yeah, I'm not going to deny that. It's very much the same in a lot of ways.
Although
yeah.
what I'll give it is that what they really added that was a unique element to its beats. Not like totally unique, but different from the first one. There's a real specific ticking time clock to this movie, where the first one doesn't really have that. This one has this element where Michael is all gone, Christopher Robin on us. He hates being an adult at a very specific time in England. It's he's exactly out of Christopher Robin in this movie.
It's so Christopher Robin.
Yeah.
It's very much, we've seen this so many times before, the overworked father who...
If it was about the dad, it would just be that movie.
Similar to the first Mary Poppins, it kind of is about the dad in the end, like the arc of it all too.
Well, if he had any screen time.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have significant screen time. The ticking time clock to it is that they're about to lose their house, so they have 5 days to find a certificate of shares to the bank, so that way they can have money to pay off the loan that they have to the house.
Yeah.
And so you have this very specific clock, which gives it a more sense of urgency throughout. But in the midst of that, it's the same beats of the first one. But in the middle of that, I mean, I still think, what's Ben Whishaw, is that his name? I think he does a great job in the film, though.
Yeah, and again, to be fair, you know, they do the thing that they've done in so many movies where, like, he has a wife that's passed away and he's all sad and he doesn't spend time with his children. But to be fair, he sings a song about how much he misses his wife, which was emotional.
Yeah.
I got a little teary listening to that song. It was in the beginning of the movie, too. Also, to be fair, it's not like they're touching on, oh, he's overworked and has no time for his kids. It's more like, oh, he is, like, worrying too much and maybe he just needs to just sit back and see the important things in life. I think I just appreciated that it wasn't exactly the whole, like, hey, you need to stop working hard, Dad. It wasn't that.
We joined the story at a point where things seem pretty normal for them and like they're a pretty happy family. It's just that when the bank people show up, then the problem arises. It doesn't seem as much like, oh, you've just worked yourself into a hole over time.
Yeah.
Because the movie starts out really energetically and that carries across the whole film as sort of this energy.
I'm not the biggest Rob Marshall fan in general, but I really thought he did a great job. I think if you're a fan of if you're a big fan of the first Mary Poppins movie, and I think if you're a fan of musicals in general, these kind of films, I think you're really gonna like this movie a lot. There's a lot of energy to it. There's a lot of imagination to it. I really love Julie Andrews in the first Mary Poppins, like most people, but I thought Emily Blunt really made it her own in this movie. I thought she was fantastic in this film. I'm not gonna sit here and go, which one do I prefer? I think that Emily Blunt's portrayal really stands on its own and is great for this time. I really loved her in this film. Like, when she's on screen, she really commands it. She's great.
Yeah, and what's so great about Emily Blunt's performance is that just like Julie Andrews, she can be strict when she needs to be, but then also she can be very charming at the same time.
Yeah.
There's always this big mystery with Mary Poppins, especially with, like, the first movie. You don't always know what her deal is. Like, she's very strict, and then she'll deny everything, like, when you say, like, oh, but you just did that, and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's kind of a dick move.
It is kind of a dick move a bit, but there's always this mystery to it, and I just really appreciate that Emily Blunt was able to embody that really well.
Yeah.
Strict and stern, but also very charming and sweet, and you just can't help but just love her. And she can sing. Another thing I really appreciate about this movie is that it's a movie musical with big name stars who can sing.
Yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves with movie musicals is when you get people who just can't sing and they're only there because of the star power. And this one was really, really well done.
Well, and I think a couple, at least, of the songs were actually shot using set sound, so that actually helps in and at least the couple songs where that appears, it was a nice breath of fresh air.
Did he just say fresh air?
You mentioned the song that Ben Whishaw sings toward the beginning of the movie. That's actually one of my favorite musical moments, because one of the big stakes for a movie like this is, will the music be as timeless and memorable as the original film's music is? And I don't know if that will be the case, but I do think that there are some musical moments that stand out and are pretty dazzling, especially when you get deeper into the movie and the more fantastical elements start to come out.
Yeah.
I wasn't crazy about the first musical bit because it's mostly CGI. That just becomes very apparent amid the period piece stuff, but when they do the like 2D animation stuff and some of the bigger, more ensemble-based musical numbers, I really started to appreciate the tradition this movie was keeping alive. To come back to Mary Poppins, I thought it was really, really wonderful, and there's so much to appreciate in the way that they bring back the tradition of these big, you know, sweeping musicals. You know?
Yeah.
I really think that if you haven't seen the first Mary Poppins, though, you just won't really appreciate this film. I find it very difficult to believe. I had only seen the first one for the first time ever a few days ago.
That's crazy to me.
So to watch this, I was like, oh, I would have been wildly lost. A lot of this is really built off of your nostalgia factor for Mary Poppins. It really is.
It really is in that way. And it's so funny because the movie in so many ways is so charming, but at the same time, yeah, there is just...
It's very reliant.
This is kind of here because a lot of this kind of stuff was in the past movie, and there's a lot of beats that are hit on from the last movie too, even though like it's very unique and distinct in some ways, but then it's also insanely familiar in some ways.
It's the definition of same but different.
It
is
really,
exactly
it
that.
really is. But it was still really charming.
It was.
You know?
I don't really remember the songs.
I don't either.
But I remember the sequences better.
Yeah.
Like, you know, instead of going into the painting, they go into a pot, which is essentially the painting sequence in the first movie.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of the imagery there. Or instead of them cleaning the room, they're going into a bathtub. And I remember a lot of the sequences there, but I don't really remember the songs.
I don't either, because I realized that too. I didn't really walk out of there just humming any of the tunes.
Yeah.
Not even the last one, which was like so lively and so beautiful. But yet, visually, it's so
Visually,
memorable.
it's beautiful. It's very
gorgeous.
beautiful. Yeah, it is. Lin-Manuel Miranda arguably gets more things to do than Mary Poppins does.
He kind of does, yeah. But again, he can sing and he can really sell it, and he's really charming, even though he really is kind of a burnt knockoff.
A lot of this movie are the children's of the former characters. There's a lot of people who are just supplements for the characters from the original. Arguably, I think the choreography dance moves that I remember the most come from one of his sequences in the film. There was something about when he's not singing that was distracting to me. I've never heard Lin-Manuel Miranda before in my life. I've never heard an interview. But when he was doing his dialogue scenes, he kind of delivers every line the same way. So it had me going, that's probably not his real accent. And so I was very distracted whenever he was doing just lines. Every line was delivered the same way.
No, I mean, it was kind of putting on the accent thing again, just like Dick Van Dyke, because there's always been this big thing. There's always been this whole thing where in the first movie, like, while Dick Van Dyke is wonderful and very charming and very happy in the first movie, you can't deny that Cockney accent is not
It's not good.
It's not good.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I kind of got the same feeling here too. But he was, again, still charming, and I still give him props for bringing the, you know, just the energy into this movie. It was great.
I mean, I found him very charming. He was one of the elements I was looking forward to the most because I like him generally. I've not seen Hamilton. I've heard a lot of the music.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, while I did enjoy watching him and I did feel the joy coming off of his character, I did feel like he was perhaps the one element of the cast that sort of stuck out and didn't quite coalesce because he seemed kind of hammier than everybody else in the movie to me. I hate to say it, but I almost felt like it was one of those things where someone who is clearly used to being on stage more of the time is now having to adapt to the screen. I thought that, some of his subtleties weren't that subtle. A lot of his delivery was pretty like a lot of the time. But again, he had one of my favorite musical numbers in the whole movie with all the lyrics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
And Dick Van Dyke's in here.
Oh my gosh.
Which is ruining the trailer.
You know, it is a little bit. First of all, you guys were there. In the audience that we were with, when Dick Van Dyke walked through the door, the audience applauded.
Yeah.
They were
He went
so
nuts.
excited to see him. If you don't know, Dick Van Dyke is in his early 90s.
Oh, it shows.
It does, but he was tap dancing in this. listen, he was.
Oh, I was worried.
I know, but I couldn't help but be like, oh, look at him. He's just so happy
It's
to
like
be
cute
here.
but worrisome at the same time. Like,
I know.
Like, oh my god, why are you making him do this?
I know, but I just loved it. I thought he
Yeah.
was great in this for his like short little appearance that he had in the movie.
I don't love this movie. I don't dislike this movie. I enjoyed it. I did enjoy this movie. I think Emily Blunt does a great job in this movie. And I think the supporting cast is also really good. There was no character other than Emily Blunt that I really loved in this film. I think that if you don't see the first one, you won't really care for this one. I think the choreography and the visuals stand out way more than the actual musical numbers do. But I still think there's a lot of fun to be had. Like, even when I was kind of not really paying attention to the lyrics, I was still like able to enjoy what was being put in front of my face the entire time.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
yeah,
No,
I'd recommend, if you're a fan of this kind of thing, I think you'd really like it.
yeah, if you are a musical fan or just love the original Mary Poppins, then you will definitely, I think, enjoy this. But I think, as Greg said, like, if you haven't seen the first one, probably will be a little bit lost. But visually, it's great. Music's really good. Not super memorable, but still very charming. Charming. Just, wasn't amazing.
Yeah, I feel like the true stars of this movie for me were just the imagination overall, the cast overall, and the tradition of the kind of movie they're trying to make. All those elements really swept me up, really dazzled me. As a story, like we've said, it's pretty familiar, especially if you're familiar at all with Mary Poppins. So in a way, I wish this would open up the door for Disney using all these resources that they clearly still have to make things like this that don't have to be locked into a familiar bubble. But
Yeah.
if you care at all about Mary Poppins, I think you're going to really have a good time at this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, Mary Poppins Returns. Do you want Mary Poppins Rises, the movie? That's my one.
Zombie Mary Poppins comes back.
It takes place in modern day England. You guys can subscribe to the Reject Nation, click that notification bell, make sure to check out Adorkable Rachel's YouTube channel, and also download and follow us on the Stardust App, people, where you can post your own reactions too. Hold for laughter. All right, now, Rachel, leave the video.